Today I'm starting a 30-day challenge to see if I can learn Uzbek in 1 month. If you don't already know, Uzbek is a Turkish language primarily spoken in Uzbekistan, which is in Central Asia. I currently don't know a single word in Uzbek, and so I'm going to show you day by day how I would go about learning a new language from knowing absolutely nothing. Time tends to be the #1 obstacle preventing people from learning a new language, and so I'm only going to spend 15 to 30 minutes a day studying Uzbek to show you just how much you could learn in 1 month. So, if I were to start learning a new language from scratch, this is what I would do. First, I would find an app to use to help me stay consistent. A lot of people hate on Duolingo, but I think it's a great start. The most important part is that you practice every single day. Unfortunately, Duolingo does not have Uzbek, and so I'm going to use Mango Languages. It's a language app that has a ton more languages and has better quality in my opinion. The second thing I'm going to do is find as much input as possible. So for me, I like to check on Spotify. Spotify has a top 50 playlist for almost every country where it shows the top 50 songs that are currently the most popular songs in that country. So I'm going to look at Uzbekistan and listen to a bunch of the songs that are in Uzbek and choose some of my favorites and add them to a new playlist. I also like to look for YouTubers that speak Uzbek or even Netflix shows that are in the target language. Another way to obtain input is by talking to people who speak that language. And unfortunately, most of us don't know somebody who speaks Uzbek. But there are a ton of apps like Tandem and HelloTalk or italki that help you to find people who speak the languages that you want to learn. And so I started looking for people on Tandem and found a few people that live in Uzbekistan that I can start talking to and practicing with. And the last thing I'm going to do is have a language book where I can write down all the new words that I'm learning and even try journaling in my target language. Okay, so for day 3, first we're going to eat some breakfast. Got my Frosted Flakes here. And we're going to work on some Mango Languages. And then after that, we are going to try to find some YouTubers that speak Uzbek to start getting some listening practice in and to see some of the cultural stuff. We're going to try to find a YouTuber, and I'll probably start watching 1 video a day, hopefully. We'll see. I personally like travel vlogs, and so I feel like I'm learning the language and also like getting excited about traveling, and so that's usually what I aim for. But you can really do this with any kind of thing. If you like cooking, you can watch cooking in Uzbek or whatever your target language is. You can watch the news in that language, which I also tend to do. You can watch like lifestyle vlogs or even like comedy stuff, podcasts, anything you really want. But the goal is you want to find something that's interesting that maybe you would already do anyway in your native language, and then just do the same thing in your target language. And so it keeps you consistent and it's something that's interesting to you, so you'll keep doing it every day. So basically, sometimes it's really hard to find YouTube channels in your target language because if you just type in Uzbek travel vlogger, almost always it will bring up English-speaking travel vloggers going to Uzbekistan. And so sometimes you have to kind of play around with how you search for things. So I haven't really been able to find like travel vloggers that speak Uzbek. It's kind of hard to find. One tip I would have is usually you can try to search how you would say travel vlog in that language, and then if you just search that on YouTube, that will usually do better. But I found this website called weproject.media, and it has 7 YouTube channels from Uzbekistan that are worth watching. Unfortunately, Uzbekistan speaks a lot of Russian, and so some of them are in Russian and not Uzbek, which is not helpful for me trying to learn Uzbek. But I did find this first channel is like a game show, variety show channel. The second one is this like talking head guy. I don't know, he talks about lots of different random things. And this last one is called Subyektiv. And it's basically a lot of interviews and different videos with like interesting people from Uzbekistan. So I think this is the one I'm gonna go with for now. Start watching some of his videos, maybe 1 video a day, but they're kind of long. So I definitely would start watching them with subtitles until you can understand probably 50, 60, 70% of what's happening in the video. I would use subtitles personally, and so that's what we're gonna do. So the thing with apps is that they're good at teaching you vocabulary and a few like memorized phrases, but they're not very good at teaching you grammar. Mango Languages does a pretty good job of this actually, because it has color coding and kind of has some grammar notes that it teaches you what certain things mean. But for verb conjugations, that's something that I typically just Google when I start learning a language. And so sometimes it's on Wikipedia, they have like how verbs conjugate, but sometimes it's other websites. And so one of my main pieces of advice for when you start learning a language is to have like the 10 or 20 most commonly used verbs and learn how to conjugate them as quickly as possible. And so I'm going to look up 2 or 3 of those kinds of verbs and try to figure out how to conjugate them for present tense. Okay, now it is day 7, and so I'm officially 1 week into this challenge. The last few days, I've mostly just been focusing on using the app to learn as much vocabulary as possible. And then I wrote down all the words that I've been learning in my notebook. One of my theories is that you want to use as many senses as possible when you're learning a new language, because that's how it helps create new connections in your brain. And so first you learn it by seeing it, and then you say it out loud, and then you hear it, and then you write it down and you're seeing it again. Sometimes some people will even do like an action with a word to help them remember it better. But all of those things help you to remember that word and have it in more different situations to be able to help you create new connections in your brain. And so after I learn the word, I take a screenshot of it on my phone, and then I write it down in my notebook later at a different time. And then sometimes I'll go through them at night before I go to sleep. I'll just like look through a page or 2 of words that I've learned to try to just get them fresh in my mind. And I also went through my music, my Uzbek playlist that I've been making, and realized that a bunch of my songs were either Russian but made by Uzbek singers, which is kind of complicated. But I only want to do Uzbek for now. And so I took out all the Russian songs. And then I also realized that a bunch of the songs were actually Romanian, which is not similar to Uzbek. So I had to get rid of all those ones too. So sometimes what you gotta do is you gotta go through songs, and I will just usually Google search the singer or the composer of the song and nationality or something. And usually if it's a big enough singer, they'll have a Wikipedia page, obviously. If not, sometimes if you put nationality, you can deduct where the person's from. Okay, so today is day 10, and so at the end of the day, I'm going to do a little speaking and just try to like show you how much I've learned so far, and just like do like a little self-introduction. But first, I'm going to go through my book and try to review some verbs since I've just learned a bunch of new words. And so I'm going to check through all the words that I've already learned and just write down all the verbs that I've learned already. The goal is to look for patterns. And so most of the verbs in Uzbek, for example, have a lot of like endings that you add on to conjugate it and also to determine the tense. For example, to say I was born, you say "Doğulganman." And so the man means it's me that's acting, that's the conjugation, and then the gyan refers to something in the past tense. I haven't really figured it out yet. So basically you have to look for these similar patterns. So if you say I was born or I was doing, that was is gonna turn into something different in Uzbek. And so I'm just gonna try to find like the actual root of the word and try to write all of the verbs that I've learned down. And so then I can apply the new conjugation rules that I've learned to those words. Okay, so now it is the end of day 10, which means I'm going to do a little checkup to see how far I've come with the language. And so I'm going to just kind of like talk a little bit about some of the things that I've learned. And then I'll do the same thing again on day 20, and then obviously on day 30 after the challenge is over. Here goes nothing. Qalay yaxshimisiz, mening ismim Jordan, men qo'shma shtatlardanman, men Connecticut da tug'ilganman. Lekin men Arizona da yashayman. Men Uzbekistonga bormaganman. Men institutda moliya va business o'qiganman va arab tilini ham o'qiganman. Hopefully that's right. So that's pretty much where I'm at right now with Uzbek. Not super impressive, I think, but I have like a basic introduction down. I've learned like, you know, how to say stuff about family, stuff about my major, stuff about just like general things about me. But I'm starting to learn how to do verbs and some conjugations, and so hopefully I can continue to improve, and by day 20 I'll be a lot better. On day 13, I did some study on Mango languages, and then after that, I decided to try to watch a video from an Uzbek YouTube channel I found called Subyektiv, which basically does interesting video essays about many different topics in Uzbek. I was able to pick out a couple words, but I also realized that YouTube doesn't have auto captions for Uzbek, so it thought the video was in Turkish and the subtitles were all messed up. So then on day 17, I realized that I was spending way too much time trying to diversify my input by listening to podcasts or watching YouTube videos or memorizing song lyrics when I really should have just been focusing on the basics. So I decided to focus more on just using the app as much as possible until I build up a good base. Guys, it is now day 20, which is kind of wild because it feels like it's gone super fast. I feel like day 10 was like yesterday. But I'm going to show you how far I've come in the last 10 days since the last checkup. Salam alaikum. Mien hozircha yigirma kunlar Uzbekcha organ gyanman. Va mien hozir kop sozlar tushunaman. Lekin men koproq sozlar o'rganmoqchiman. So I could say things like that. Or I also have learned like all the numbers recently for like prices and stuff. So I learned like bunarcha qancha and menga arzonroq bira olasizmi? Menda faqat shuncha bor. And other important phrases like that. I've just been learning a lot of other verbs and other like connector words, conjunctions and stuff to be able to make more complex sentences. And so now I am at the point where I've gotten a lot of the basic words down so I can start learning from other sources. And so bugun, meaning yengi Uzbekistan'dan dostum bor. I don't think that's right at all, actually. But what I meant to say is I have a new friend that I just met on Instagram from Uzbekistan. We've been trying to chat today, and I've been learning lots of new words just from like asking him normal questions and introductions and stuff. And so basically, sometimes you can meet people online from the place where you want to learn the language very easily by using apps like Tandem or italki, or even like dating apps. For example, Hinge, you can set your location wherever you want. I haven't tried that for Uzbekistan yet, but some countries don't really use dating apps. I think Uzbekistan's probably one of them because from my understanding, arranged marriages is still the most common form of dating in Uzbekistan. But for some other places, you can put your profile location in whatever country you want to go to and meet people who live there and practice with them. But also I tend to try to search for people on Instagram, and I'll sometimes comment on Uzbek influencers' posts, or I commented today on a post by Drew Binsky, who's a famous traveler, world traveler who's been to every country in the world, about what languages I'm learning. And so I just said, hi, I speak these languages and I'm learning Uzbek. And then I had a couple different Uzbek people reply to my comment and want to practice talking with me. So I think there are a lot of different ways to meet people. A lot of people feel like it's hard to have practice with natives, but for the most part, a lot of people in the world are really excited to teach you about their language, and they're excited that foreigners are learning their language. Like for example, Uzbekistan, the guy said he's really happy that I'm learning Uzbek because not very many foreigners learn Uzbek, and even in Uzbekistan, Russian is still used a lot, and so it's easier than you think to make native speaker friends from whatever language that you want to learn. And then I'm also going to start the next couple days picking one or two Uzbek songs that I really like that I found on Spotify, and write down the lyrics for the entire song, translate all of them word by word, and then try to memorize the song in Uzbek by looking at translations. And so this is a really good way of helping you to learn a song from that culture and be able to connect with people about it, and also learn a ton of vocab in a very applied setting. So you can automatically see why these words are important. If they're written in a song, they're probably pretty common words that people use. And so it automatically triggers your brain to put that in more long-term storage instead of short-term memory. So yeah, so that's it for this checkup. And so the next time we'll have another face-to-face talk like this will be on day 30 at the end of the challenge. I'm a little bit nervous, but we'll see how it goes. Day 21 to day 26 were pretty calm. I just kept working on the same things like learning new words on the app, taking screenshots and writing them down, and trying to learn verb conjugations from this cool website that I found. On day 27, I decided to try to find some podcasts in Uzbek that I could listen to in order to work on listening comprehension, but I couldn't really find anything good. Finding good resources and media for getting enough input is always one of the hardest parts of learning a language. So I decided I'm going to start making ebooks for every language that I've learned with all of my favorite movies, podcasts, books, YouTubers, and Spotify playlists. I will be releasing my Indonesian ebook next week, and I've linked it in the description. I've also included my favorite Uzbek resources that I've found during this challenge completely for free in a Google Drive link down below. I started making these ebooks and compiling all of these resources because it's something that I wish I would have had access to when I started learning languages, and I'm sure they will be super useful to you on your language learning journey. And now, the final check-in. Today is the final day of the challenge, which means we are going to find out exactly how far I've come in the last 30 days. I'm actually a lot better than I was expecting from only doing 15 to 30 minutes a day. So if you can do an hour or two every day, just imagine how much farther you'd be along. So without further ado, here's my final speaking test after my full month of studying Uzbek. And so if you're a native speaker, please feel free to correct me or give me any tips or fix my pronunciation or anything. Meaning ismim Jordan va min khoshma shtatlardan man. من كونكتيكت تغيلجان من لكن من خوزر أريزونا دا يشايمان يوشم يجرم ساكيس دا و من باسكتبول oynashna يقترمان كوز meaning in يقترجان فاصلم çünkü كوز basketbolning فاصل و meaning تغيلجان كونم نيامبردا من خم پلاژگا برشنا یقترمان و مشق قلشنا یخش کورمان من سیاحت قلشنا یقترمان و من تلنا تلارا ارگانشنا یخش کورمان شونین اوچون من حضرچا ازبکچا ارگانیابمان چونکی من شویل کینروق احتمال Avgusta Uzbekistan gya bormokchiman, inshallah. So that's it, and I've also memorized 2 Uzbek songs, which I'm not going to sing because copyright, but I'll put them down in the description below if you're interested in listening to them. Overall, I think I'm in a pretty decent place, honestly. And the last thing I want to talk about in this video is what I would have done differently if I were to redo this challenge, because this is the first time I've really tried to do a full 30-day challenge completely from scratch without knowing anything. So if I were to do it over again, I think I'd spend more time on the app for the first 2 or 3 weeks and really just focus on getting some basic vocabulary and structures down before branching out and getting into other things like YouTube videos or even memorizing songs. I've used memorizing songs and it's been really effective in the past in other languages, but I didn't realize that it takes a lot more knowledge of vocabulary and grammar in order for you to be able to start memorizing songs, depending on the language, obviously. But in Uzbek, I still have zero clue really how a few different particles work, like na, ning, or sa. And so it's hard for me to understand kind of how the structure of a lot of the language works, which is also why in my speaking test part, I really used pretty basic sentences and they probably weren't correct. So again, feel free to correct me. And the other thing that I would do is try to get more help from native speakers than I did, just because it's super helpful to ask about grammar things specifically. And so you can ask them, oh, what's the difference between this word and this word? Or when do you have to use this specific particle or this word, or different things like that I think are super useful to talk to a native speaker. And especially for a language like Uzbek where there's not a ton of information online that's readily available or easy to find. But overall, I'm really proud of how far I've come with Uzbek in just 1 month. And I hope this is inspiring to you to see how far you can come in 1 month of learning a new language if you really only spend 15 to 30 minutes a day studying this language. And so good luck with whatever language you're learning. And if you're from Uzbekistan, hopefully I will see you soon.